Diversity, I define as 1Q, the quantitative representation of difference. It's about counting how many women, people of color, people from indigenous communities we have, how many people we have from the LGBTQ communities, and more. When we are in the land of diversity, we put resources towards building a more inclusive environment. So we'll have a committee, we'll have policies, we'll do...
That was some diversity, inclusion, equity grifter, a consultant who runs a consultant at a consulting company who advises companies how to dye training, how to dye their customers, how to dye their employees, how to make the company die. She admitted right off the bat that diversity is numbers, which means quotas, of course. Now, we're going to talk about our favorite subject, diversity, today, because we got some more standards that have been brutally gutted and left to bleed out in dark alleys. Now, I want to make this about models. I want to make this about predictions. So one thing we should all know, regular readers, listeners, I've only started this a couple of weeks ago, but regular readers anyway, we should all know is that models that make good and skillful predictions should be trusted at least more than those that make predictions that never come true. Isn't that right? I mean, we don't have to have any kind of formal proof of that. It just seems obviously true, and it is. Well, here's two models, competing models, making predictions about the same thing. Let's look at both of them and see which one should be accorded more trust. Model A is equality. All people under this model are really equal. This is a premise of the model that all people are really equal in capability and potential, but they differ in material and cultural circumstance. These differences lead to inequalities in outcome, particularly in the outcome of diversity, which, as we just heard the woman, is variously defined as all minorities to mostly minorities with a quote around the minorities in some area. And equity, which is different than equality. It's the state in which all but rulers and elites are made to be equal in material circumstance. Now, equality predicts that if inequalities in circumstance and culture are removed or eliminated, especially early, equity and diversity will obtain and social harmony will result. That's Model A. Now, Model B is this: inequality. The premise of this model is that no two people are equal in capability and potentiality, and that even if material and cultural circumstances are made perfectly equal everywhere, inequity would still result because of innate differences which can never be removed. Inequality, this Model B, predicts that if people come to understand their own, always limited by circumstance and cultural strengths and weaknesses, we will come closer to, but never achieve, social harmony. That is to say, we all have circumstances that we don't like and wish were different and try to change, but life being what it is unfair and won't ever be made fair and can't be made fair and shouldn't be made fair. And that even if it were, we're still not going to get the results that we wanted. And if everybody did recognize these kinds of things, particularly that they're not the same as other people and don't have the same capabilities, particularly intellectual capabilities, we'll be all a lot better off. Now, those enthralled to Model A, equality, do their best to enforce equity in material and cultural circumstance, and even introduce stark inequities to benefit designated victims. Now, we all know this, and they've been doing this for quite a while. In fact, it's written into the law of the United States, the Civil Rights Act. One way to equalize circumstance is to weaken or remove standards. We saw, many times, we saw previously, for instance, that medical schools allow victims preferred victims, welcome victims, beloved victims, official victims, to score far below non-victims on standardized tests like the MCAT and STEP exams and so forth, and still be admitted and or still pass their steps. At least one med school we saw before already eliminated the MCAT because of diversity. Diversity wasn't being reached. The rest, many, not every single school now, but there's a new report out. I have a link on the blog. They're all requiring oaths to die. Professors at med schools and the students are requiring oaths to die. You can't teach there, or you can't be a student there, unless you take an oath to this god of diversity. And of course, I have the link in here. There's a story, a doctor, a physician named Goldfarb, who is complaining, makes the very good complaint that once you take this is his quote now, quote, once you take a cohort of students who struggle, you have to ratchet down the entire curriculum. And now that's just obvious. And what happens when you get a bunch of doctors who can't remember the names of all the bones? Well, it's obvious, or should be obvious. Now, you've heard from me and you've read from me the equality litany more times than I can remember, but I'm going to do it again. It never hurts to repeat, since all of us haven't assimilated it yet, but it goes like this. Diversity, the God diversity, needs to be appeased, and diversity itself, the state, is desired. And in order to achieve this wonderful state of diversity, it is promised standards will not be lowered. Standards are then lowered in order to achieve this diversity. A spokeswoman arrives and says the standards were not lowered. Soon after, the spokeswoman will announce the standards were never really needed in the first place. Diversity, of course, is still not achieved. It can't be achieved unless something is going on. So we see a ratcheting effect because diversity has still not been achieved. We've lowered the entrance requirement for MCATs for victims. They don't score well on their STEP exam. We lower the requirements for STEP exam. They don't score well on those. We lower the requirements for the classes so that they can get out of those. They don't score well enough. The standards keep lowering and lowering and lowering and lowering, and it just happens in every field. Not just medicine. Not just medicine. That's what the point of this blog today. Not just medicine. Model A's predictions have failed. But somehow it's concluded not that Model A is wrong, but that we didn't Model A hard enough. And the litany begins again, and standards are lowered more. And now, even worse, the prediction of Model A is that greater harmony would result the more that diversity has been achieved. Of course, what happens in reality is that social disharmony increases, not harmony. Well, the people who notice and point this out are blamed for the lack of diversity. These people are canceled and called names like anti-victim. At no point is it ever acknowledged that Model A has failed or that Model B has merit, because neither the theory of equality, which drives Model A, and the desire for its so-called solution, which is to say equity, it can't be abandoned. Those items of Model A are just too shiny. They're like Gollum's ring. They can't be let go. The power that people have with them is destructive of themselves, of culture, of society, but they can't let go. Now, this is a very long and pedantic introduction, and it's just really to bring you the news that yet more major standards are being dropped because of diversity. Here's a headline. This is from the Wall Street Journal. I got a link on the blog. Law School Accrediting Panel votes to make the LSAT optional. The LSAT's what the lawyers or pre-lawyers, people who want to become lawyers take, like the MCAT is what people who want to go to med school take. The real meat is in the subheadline. This is my favorite subheadline. Quote, legal education community. The legal education community has been divided over testing requirement and its impact on diversity in admissions. Oh, God. Every activity is a community these days. Legal action community forsooth. Let that pass. Anyway, there it is. The standards, they admit the standards were having a, quote, impact on diversity. They can't just say influence. We have to say impact. Let that pass too. Anyway, we can't have an impact on diversity. That can't be allowed. The foolish goal of diversity for the sake of diversity was not dropped. Instead, the standards were. Model B's prediction is disharmony will result, which is to say, I warrant the predictions of Model B would have turned out better than the predictions of Model A, and that the contest wouldn't even be close. We can also guess that the proponents of Model A will not acknowledge this, as they never have before, and will pretend not to see the results after this new LSAT maneuver is implemented. Of course, my warrant's counterfactual because Model B is not allowed in the door. It's not historically counterfactual, though. Just take any city run under Model A that was once run under Model B. Compare and contrast, then and now. Baltimore, Detroit, now Seattle, now St. Louis, now Seattle, now Portland. Which had more harmony in each case? The pre-Model B days or the current Model A days? Well, lessons learned? None. Not even one. Not a single lesson learned. The proof of that is in the opening sentence of the Wall Street Journal article on this LSAT dropping thing. Here's a quote now. An American Bar Association panel voted Friday to drop a requirement that law school applicants take the LSAT or another standardized admissions test. And amid the debate about whether the tests help or hurt diversity in admissions. Debate. What's the debate? What isn't known at this late date? Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for today. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody tomorrow. And I think I will have a podcast tomorrow, a classic one I run every year, well, a post I ran every year. But this time I'll turn it into a podcast. Happy trails, everybody.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
Who cares about the clouds when we're together? Just sing a song and think about sunny weather.
Happy trails to you till we meet again.